Hello. Today is Sunday, April 3rd, 2022. Let's start by setting our intention and motivation. Make an aspiration by saying the four immeasurables. We don't have screen sharing today, so hopefully by now most of you know this by heart. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings not be separated from the happiness that has never known suffering. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment, anger, and aversion. A little bit different time today, so I'm glad you were able to adjust. We'll meditate. For those of you who are new, we're not doing a review today, so if you go to at the end of the class, it'll go right to our YouTube, and you could see access. The first two classes of 2022 have a detailed review. So if you feel confused about the basic technique, you can find it there. But I may do some talking during the meditation, a little bit of guidance, maybe not, but probably not that much. But we're going to meditate today, and then Victoria is going to join us to finish up our discussion of the 37 practices of the Bodhisattva, and I think we'll finish that today. And then we could take some questions at the end. So, with that in mind, let's do 13 minutes of meditation today. Actually, let's start with the 9 purifying breaths before and we'll take it on the ninth breath. We'll go right into our meditation. So 9 purifying breaths. We begin with the right. We tuck the thumb under, and the right goes to the left nostril. We're breathing into the right channel, which is either white or red. White for traditionally white for males, red for females. But like we always say, we make that decision. And really visualize the 3 channels. The white on the right or left, the red, and the blue is in the center. They meet at the navel, or just beneath the navel. Hold there, and then breathe out. Breathing in and out of the same channel for these first 3 breaths. Imagine it going from the nostrils up and down the back, adjacent to the spine, all the way down to that navel area. Switch to the left hand, right nostril. Central blue channel. The last breath will imagine ejecting out of the crown of the head, merging our consciousness with space. Kind of space merging with our consciousness also. And take this into meditation. Relax. Allow your body to really not going slack but relaxed, and the same with the mind. Focus our attention on the breath. That's the first technique, focusing on the area between the nostrils and upper lip, where the air moves in and out. That's a technique to place our attention. But what we're really focusing on is our mind. What is our mind doing? What's arising in our mind? Becoming aware of what is going on in the mind and what's arising. And leaving whatever does arise where it is, in place. Not following it, not pushing it away, noticing it. Noticing what the mind is doing really means noticing thoughts, because that's what the mind does. It thinks. What do we do with this thought once we know what we're thinking? We first notice it. And if we don't follow it, don't push it away, don't make it a big deal, really, just notice it, leave it where it is, it will dissipate on its own, go back into the mind. And what we're talking about addresses a separation, right? So if you think about it, there's the thought, and then there's the mind that can look at the thought. What is the mind that's looking at the thought? That. And the qualities of that mind that looks at thought is spacious, aware, open, limitless, unstained, untainted by anything. You can have the most difficult thought, horrible thought, you know what I mean, a scary thought, violent thought, and that once that dissipates, the mind from where it came out of is not touched by that. May have recurring thoughts, patterns of thought, but they rise and fall like waves on the ocean. You could think of thoughts like, arising from the ocean. A wave arises from the ocean, goes back into the ocean. It's not, you wouldn't call a wave the ocean, but It's not the ocean. Even the biggest tsunami or wave, it goes back into the ocean eventually. Um, or we use the visualization technique of the clouds in the sky. Those of you who have done this before, which is most of you, I'm assuming, know what I'm talking about. If you've been doing this a while, you don't have necessarily use back to the breath all the time. You could almost go back to the mind. What's the mind doing? What's the mind experiencing? What's the mind thinking? And then applying a technique or leaving the thought where it is, and then settling back into that spaciousness. And we're going to go back and forth between checking the mind, seeing what's there, leaving the thought where it is, settling into the spacious nature of mind, probably getting lost in more thoughts till we remember that we have to look at our mind. That's the interplay that's going to be going on during the practice. That's how it goes. Okay, great. This practice, and if you want to write into the Q&A later how, those of you who've been doing it a while, how this is, if it's changed over time, or where you feel you're at with it, or what kind of qualities are coming up. If you feel, we'd love to hear, and either you could do it in the Q&A function today or in the email. How you've brought it into your day-to-day life, So if you can start to look at your mind in the midst of your, daily activity, that's when things can really start to change. When you really start to become aware of what you're thinking in the midst of interactions with others, in the midst of difficulties, and seeing the thoughts that arise and seeing what your motivations are. You see how the ego protects itself and what it wants, and how it tries to get what it wants. And you know, we're really not talking about anything religious here. What we're really talking about is starting to become brutally, brutally, brutally honest with ourselves. And the realization that we are our own responsibility, that, it's not this kind of work, or this kind of change or path can only be done, and initiated by yourselves. Obviously, you need a teacher, that's very important to get the instruction, but only you can do the work. Teacher cannot do it for you, We always encourage you to find teachers of authentic lineages. In my hashtags, when I post on Instagram, I mentioned some of them. We have some of them on the website. I post a lot of them on Instagram and things like that. But and the teacher is essential. But so is the student, right? You have to initiate this, and to be brutally honest with ourselves, I think is a good thing, right? I mean, to be living with some, pursuing some kind of truth. With that, let's bring Victoria on to bring us through the last of the 37 practices of the Bodhisattva.
Hello, everyone. So we are at the end of the Bodhisattva practices, and stanza number 36, the conclusion stanzas. We have 36 and 37. Number 36 says, in brief, whatever conduct one engages in, one should ask, what is the state of my mind? Accomplishing others' purpose through constantly maintaining mindfulness and awareness is the Bodhisattva's practice. Through the whole 37 Bodhisattvas practices, there's only one theme, and that is how to go from ordinary mind to the extraordinary mind of Bodhisattvas. The 37 Bodhisattva practices has given us the reasons and the techniques of how to turn the ordinary awareness to the extraordinary awareness of the Bodhisattvas, and has explained in many ways through many stanzas why one should turn away from delusion to awareness. So really, this last stanza, I should ask myself in everything that I do, what is the state of my mind? It is the point at the end of the 37 Bodhisattva practices at which we have already realized something about the view and the conduct and the path. These two states of awareness, the ordinary awareness of the ego and the altruistic awareness of the bodhisattvas, is something that by now we should have realized to a certain extent, and it should have dawned on us by this time why we want to change the ordinary mind of the ego to the extraordinary mind of the bodhisattva, why we want to live that kind of a life. because there are two different types of life that we can live based on these two consciousnesses. And that actually happens in every instance. It's not like something we do tomorrow or later or whenever. It's something that we do in every single moment. This question, how is the state of my mind, should be asked at every moment of our day, of our every waking moment. Even in sleep we can practice too, of course. So what are these two states of mind, just to recapitulate? Ordinary mind, ego-grasping, me, mine, is a state of awareness which we call ignorance or delusion. The other state of awareness, the bodhisattva mind, or awareness of, as opposed to me, mine, the awareness of all of us, of everything, is a state of awareness that connects us to all beings and all things. It connects us to the nature of all things, because after all, the path is, what do we want to realize? We don't want to be a nice guy at the end of this process of practice. We want to realize reality, the ultimate truth. We want to know the truth of ourselves. We want to realize the truth of all things. And that's a very big, tall order. But if we don't start somewhere and progress there every day, every instance of the day, little by little, supported by the view, we'll never get there. We'll just continue to live in this, life of mindlessness and absence of light. So we have the base awareness. When Michael gives you guided meditation, he always talks about the open nature, the spaciousness of the mind, and then thoughts arising and dissolving back into that spaciousness. Ego mind is a drastic reduction of this base awareness. The bodhisattva mind, that we've been referring to as the ground, Buddha nature, primordial mind, is that open state, is that basis from which everything arises and dissolves into it. All mental events, perceptions, experiences arise and dissolve back into our ground awareness. I thought it was very appropriate to think of the ego mind, the ego awareness, as a black hole. So when the star collapses, its gravitational pool is so incredibly dense that it bends light, and basically nothing really escapes it. Ego mind is like a black dwarf when the star collapses. It is unable to give any more light and is not able to sustain life. It dissolves light and everything that enters its energetic field. On the other hand, our ground awareness, not the ego awareness, not the black dwarf, not this me, mine, this compressed, small, dark space. Our ground awareness, our Buddha nature, within which everything happens, even this little black star, this little dense space, is still in the vast sky of our base nature, of our base awareness. That awareness is limitless, in fact, and it's opposite of the black hole, the space of collapse. In open awareness, all creative things happen, arts, sciences, as well as our meditational path. Actually, everything good and beneficial happens within that open space. It is within that open space that we pull the creativity. It is within that open space that anything that is meaningful happens to us. Because awareness based on wisdom is very spacious and luminous, and it counters that energy that bends light and that is not able to sustain life. We have this whole endless open sky, but we choose to be at the center of a black hole, the ego. The problem arises when we perceive out of that black hole. All the perceptions are very twisted, because just the way the nature of the ego functions, It's energy. It breaks everything down and everything is absorbed into it. That's why that state of mind, that state of awareness is called illusory. Because really, truly, when we see anything out of me and mine and give me and I hate you because you didn't do this for me and you have more and I want it and I crave it, our perceptions, our mind becomes extremely, extremely twisted. And really what it means for us in practical terms is that for as long as we remain in the ego mind, we forget the spaciousness, we forget our basic nature. If we occupy that small space in the entirety of our mental universe, everything we perceive is bent and it's twisted. And above all, we're not, we forgo really knowing the vast nature of our mind and of our nature. So this is what the path is about. This is what the practice is about. This is why you ask yourself, what is the state of my mind? There are two paths at every single instance in our life, because we can choose to be in the black dwarf star, in the ego, or we can be in this basic state of awareness, the bodhisattva mind, the mind that wishes to benefit all sentient beings, is connected to all sentient beings because it sees them all, it recognizes them all. It is not compressed into that dark, small place. It's we can also compare it to life of a golem. When we're so plagued with our own things, we become like Gollum who protects the ring in the cave. And for all this thing that he has, this ring of power, he has nothing but misery, lives alone, and lives in a dark cage. And so meditation, Trungpa Rinpoche says that meditation is a state of awareness in which the unmasking of the ego happens, where we actually see that we can be the golem or we can be this other being, a bodhisattva being connected to all things. Meditation is knowing directly which state of mind we are in right now, every single moment. Meditation is not some breathing, sitting exercise we do. Please don't be mistaken about that. Meditation is touching our basic state, our Buddha nature. It's touching the luminosity that is always present in us. Meditation and enlightenment are inextricably connected. That's what meditation is for. It's not to make us feel good. It's to discover our ultimate nature and through skillful means start to live through that nature and liberate our energy from the ego. Awareness is a state of ongoing meditation, like the stanza 36 says. At every moment we ask ourselves, so what is the state of my awareness presently right now? And each time we ask ourselves, we make the choice. I can stand in the ego awareness. I can stand in this open field of awareness. What is the basic difference for us in practical terms? Well, our ego awareness is something that wants to reify things. It wants to make things permanent. It wants to have the face of an 18-year-old, the body of an 18-year-old. It wants to have the big house. It wants to have the most beautiful car. And the ego never wants these things to be, it never wants these things to change. It never wants to lose these things. So basic insanity happens because you know what? We won't have the 18-year-old face. We won't have the 18-year-old body. The car will get scratched. The house can go on fire. So we can't really live with this delusion, with this incessant desire to stabilize things, because by the time that I just said this sentence right now, I've already changed. Everything is on a relative state. Everything is always in flux. So sanity, the awareness that has the view and understands that things are impermanent. Sanity, the basic sanity, is to look at the wrinkle and say, oh, while I got this wrinkle, I loved someone, I raised my children, my house got old and maybe it lost a lot of its value, but I've had a really good life in it. You know, my car got old, it got scratched, but now I'm going to donate and maybe it'll benefit someone else. Maybe some kid will buy it for 20 bucks and ride it. That's basic sanity. Trying to live and hoard and have this kind of a golem mind and be sucked by this dark energy of the ego, that is the engine through which samsara is formed. That is the cause of suffering. Every time we desire to make something permanent, every time that we are in the grasp of desires and we want more and we want, you know, and it's this incessant hunger, we are creating a state of pain. By being, by functioning out of awareness that is based in our ego mind, we are for ourselves creating this kind of hellish place of suffering. But again, we have the practice, we have the Dharma, we have the choice. What is required not to stay in this kind of a difficult place where we get wrinkles and we fall is to have basic awareness, is to touch the, 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 the ground, is to touch our Buddha nature, is to practice, is to ask ourselves in every single moment, what is the state of my mind? Am I functioning out of this tiny little compressed space of me and mine and I want more? Or do I see things for what they are? Do I know that they're impermanent and interconnected? Do I know that I am connected to all beings? That I couldn't wear these clothes or sit in this house or speak to you through on the internet, and we couldn't share these kinds of things if not for being connected to endless and countless beings. So this is what the Buddha Dharma gives us. It really gives us a view into reality. Maybe it's not a fully realized reality of the Buddhas, but by summoning the Bodhisattva intent, we summon the Bodhisattva mind and we get closer and closer really to our nature. And so I just wanted to say, please practice. Practice is not a comfort space. Practice is a much more ultimate, incredible space. And it can bring us from this very difficult state of the ego, which is like an infectious disease, to a place of compassion and the place of happiness for ourselves. And that's just a very practical thing for us, of course. And it's very, very achievable. And it's achievable if we maintain our consciousness all the time. If we ask ourselves, is my body, so how do we get to that place? What do we do? How do we meditate? We make everything very still and very lit up, very clear. We bring a lot of light into that dark space of me. We make sure that our body is very still. We pacify. We make sure that our speech is very still and we connect to silence. We make sure we never say harsh words. We examine before we do, before we say, and above all, we examine our mind. This thing that Michael has been leading you for a long time now, we examine the quality of our thoughts in that vast space of awareness. This is what we use that time and those techniques for. I really, everything is at stake when we do meditation. This is truly the heart of the practice, is to understand the quality from and the space, the quality of the space from which everything takes place, from which thoughts arise, from which our speech arises, from which our body acts. So stanza 36 is the culmination of all the practices that we've been talking about, the paramitas, the view, the skillful means, what we take obstacles on the path with us. It's everything is compiled and given to us in these 37 bodhisattva practices to bring us to this place where we know how to discern the open awareness from our Buddha nature, as opposed to living in this tight grasp of the ego and the five poisons. How you recognize it? If you look inside in your words, into your thoughts, into your body, and you see any one of those 5 afflictions, then you know it's the ego. But if you look inside and you have the patience, you have the calmness, you have the ocean, and you have the love, and love will arise little by little the more you cultivate it, because it's a natural outcome of calming down the 5 afflictions, of decreasing, being the presence of the ego mind. Love is a natural consequence. Once one thing is gone, it's like when the sun is shining, the night is diminished. And so it's the same thing. Compassion, love, and luminous quality of mind will arise by eliminating this dark part of ourselves. And so now we have the skillful means, and we have the view, and we know how to check our inner state, the state. So as the stanza says, what is the state of my mind? Accomplishing others' purpose through constantly maintaining mindfulness and awareness is how we get to that state. And it is how we diminish and eliminate suffering. And then stanza 37, the conclusive stanza of the 37 Bodhisattva practices, says, in order to clear away the suffering of limitless beings, through wisdom, realizing the purity of the 3 spheres. 3 spheres are subject, object, and action. When we purify all of that, to dedicate the virtue attained by making such an effort for enlightenment is the Bodhisattva's practice. As we work to attain our own enlightenment in order to liberate all sentient beings, that is the Bodhisattva mind. In case we forget what the intention is, that's what that stanza is. And then whatever little virtue, no matter how small it is a virtue. It's like a drop added to the ocean, always dedicated. If you gave someone a flower, you said a nice word to someone, you helped someone with something, and above all, if you could do practices with them and you yourself become a better and a better practitioner, your practice becomes more stable each single time. Make sure to always dedicate the virtue, the fruit of your practice and of your action. And always stay mindful, always stay vigilant. And thank you.
Thank you. And the dedication prayer we use at the end of class is something that, like I said, we don't have the screen sharing today, but usually we do. That prayer, by this merit may all beings attain enlightenment. That prayer you can use for dedication. Thank you for bringing us through these last weeks, 37 practices, which is the heart practice of our teacher, Garchen Rinpoche, who, if what we've spoken about in regards to him interests you, we encourage you to look him up, as well as the other lamas that we talk about in class and that we read from, from time to time.
And I'm sorry, I very highly recommend reading a book by Trungpa Rinpoche.
Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche.
Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. That's called the goal is
the path.
The path is the goal. The path is the goal.
CHOGYAMTRUNGPA Rinpoche. Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. We'll go to some questions or comments. Meditation, becoming aware of my own thoughts, ego, has been life-changing. As I asked you to send some comments on how, how this is affect you, that's good to hear. So, if you really start to do this regularly, and, many of you come every week, so I'm assuming that that's what's happening. your interest grows, and there will be movement. There's if you really practice mindfully and sincerely, there will be movement and things will shift. It may not seem like they are sometimes for a while, but after a chunk of time you'll look back and you'll say, oh, things that seem difficult or cloudy or unclear start to, after a while, really start to make sense. And the only way to get there is through meditation, really. The only way you can start to work with the mind is through meditation. It really is. That's the means, the method. For the last few weeks, awareness is at the top of how I've integrated these practices into my daily life. That moment when I recognize a heightened emotion, such as anger or whatever state of mind it is, and then taking a moment to recognize it for what it is. Perhaps taking a few breaths and making a choice. So much gratitude. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what we're talking about. It's just starting to see these things. Because we haven't. We really haven't. We see the anger and we feel the anger or the emotion and we're in it, and but it's something we become habituated, conditioned to feeling. But like seeing why these things and why they arise as they arise, what is giving rise to them, not just this tacit exception that they're arising, that someone made you angry. Well, what's getting angry? Why are you getting angry? And you may have a very clear idea, because he did so-and-so, he called me a name, or he did, whatever, he took my seat, whatever it is. But when you really start to look at, well, why does that action threaten you? Why does that action make you want to retaliate? This happens through practice, starting to see what's going on.
And also, having control of your anger or subduing it and not having it at all, ultimately, it doesn't mean that you don't see when someone is acting unvirtuously. It doesn't mean that at all. Actually, your perception becomes much more clearer. You can see your action being on track, and you can see how someone else is acting. But when you take anger out of it, when you take the emotional part of it, you take away the delusion. So your action, your response could be much, much stronger, could be much more clearer, because when we don't act out of emotion, we can be much more effective. And we can change the situation so much more significantly. So this is an incredibly important part, is to be able to not just to be swept away by the story and say he's wrong, no, and not notice our own emotion, not notice when our mind has been shifted and polluted. Being able to see your emotion is almost the same as dissolving it, or you're close to it, so that you can act with complete clarity. And you will act with much more clarity when you're able to discern your emotion and not act on it. You will have control. Because really, when we talk about freedom, there is only two kinds of freedom: freedom from ignorance and freedom from afflictions. That's what we talk about when we talk about freedom. So if you can act without affliction, if you can act with a mind that is clear and focused, we can talk about freedom at that time. There's no other kind of freedom.
Sometimes when I look at my mind during meditation, it seems like my mind is not located inside my brain, but that it is in the space around me. It's sort of a strange sensation. Is this normal? No, I think that's exactly right. Even in the Tibetans, in Tibetan Buddhism, they don't even consider that the mind is here. The mind is in the heart. When you do like the prostrations, you talk about body, speech, and mind being here, not here. And there's quite a big gulf and division in science, where some scientists believe that consciousness is completely a function of the brain, And some believe that it's not, that consciousness is something other than the brain, that the brain may be some kind of receptor for consciousness, but that consciousness is different than just, some kind of brain function. When we do that ninth purifying breath, merging our mind with space, from a Buddhist point of view, mind is space and not separated from it,
Also in Buddhist tradition, our bodies permeated through awareness. And we all know we have receptors of different levels that communicate our perceptions, our experiences. But in Buddhism, consciousness permeates everything. And I don't mean just our bodies, it literally permeates everything. So think of space as being in awareness. Awareness holds space. It's not the other way around. Awareness is not contained anywhere. We only feel awareness as very tiny when we feel in that very compressed mental ego state. The more our awareness is expanded, that's why we're able to do practices like Tonglen, because we are sending our energy volitionally to someone else. We're purifying theirs and sending them back the purified energy. That is because, and it's very effective, that is because awareness permeates everything and not just our body. So your experience is actually, I'm not a teacher, but I would say that you're experiencing stepping out of your ego mind. So it's good.
I am just starting on this journey. Thank you for helping me to see this path. I think it may not be easy, but I'm committed to try to integrate these ideas and practices into a holistic improvement of body and mind. No, they're not easy. I think when you start to meditate, you really, you realize how hard it is. I think a lot of people are discouraged because they've had experiences where they've tried, especially people who try to meditate without any instruction and just try based on some kind of vague idea of what they think it is. There's a lot of people have the misconceptions that meditation is about not thinking. Like you're just going to sit and have no thoughts and sit in some kind of state of, complete blankness and peace or whatever that is. And, as you've seen, it's much more about working with the mind. That said, it's not easy. Most things that are important, that are of value, skills, be it, or things to learn, knowledge, they're not easy. What we think is easy is cruising along as we always have without becoming aware of our mind and being, led around by thought and emotion and habituated, responses to things and conditioning and being led by that constantly, on almost like an autopilot, which seems easier, but almost is much harder in a way and much more painful. But yeah, no, it's not easy, and having discipline to do anything is not easy, to do anything, I mean, how many people join the gym, and then they never go or whatever, starting a new regimen, or they start New Year's for 2 weeks and then they stop or whatever. It's discipline and committing to things, new things, especially when we're older. And our lives are very set in place and our habits and routines. So it's not easy.
And mind without touching its base awareness, its base nature. I don't mean just perceptions of things when we flutter our eyes around the room, but connecting to something much deeper, our awareness at large, within which things arise and fall, things, events, mental events, thoughts, experiences. That's why we sit to meditate. That's why we silence the body, speech, and mind, so that we can connect to that vast field of everything. The mind that doesn't connect to that will always be bored and preoccupied. So it will always be a very difficult place. There is absolutely no question about that. So practice, like all great things in life, like Michael said, extremely worth it. And actually, life without connecting to awareness, I'm not even sure what the point of it would be.
I've been feeling less irritable sense of calmness, letting things go. Yeah, I'm assuming you mean letting things go, like not, having an ability to kind of recognize situations that are not worth the emotion and the entanglement and the aggression. And by aggression, I don't always mean violent aggression or physical aggression. Sometimes aggression can be competitiveness, it could be jealousy, it could be stinginess, it could be self-righteousness,
And impatience.
impatience. Those are all forms of aggression. There's a great documentary about Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche called Crazy Wisdom. And he came to America in the late 60s or early 70s, and a lot of his students were hippies. And at the time, Vietnam was still on, and a lot of the hippies were very much into the anti-war movement. There's a moment in the movie, he's teaching, he's giving a teaching to these young people, and someone asks something, I forget exactly, it's worth checking out, but it says, how do we respond to aggression, and in society, and in our country, and what do we do with that? And he goes, I'd rather talk about the aggression in this room. And by that he meant all these,
Our mind.
he's talking about these people who are sitting down for this Buddhist teaching, thinking they're kind of above all that, and not dealing with aggression. And he's saying, no, first you start with yourself. You start to look at your own mind, how you're aggressive in very small ways. In very overt ways are easy to see, but in small ways. You take competitiveness maybe as something, a good thing, and I need that to get ahead, and this is, beneficial in some ways. But if you really start to look at, okay, what am I competitive about? Am I doing it out of a threat? Am I doing it to put this person down? You start to really examine what's going on. You certainly find some interesting things about yourself.
So the fact that you can let go of some of your attachments, and eventually more and more attachments, means you're liberating a lot of negative energy, and that means in reverse that you're experiencing more positive energy. It may not feel like that right away. You may not feel like you're seeing all things very, very clearly and with a lot of compassion, but you cannot start to feel compassion before you start letting things go, before you de-escalate aggressive internal aggressions of attachments. So that's also a very good sign of practice.
I've been using our YouTube channel, Meditate during the week. I've noticed a difference in my mind since doing that, like questioning anger before I act, also bringing faith into my Tonglen practice. Thank you. Yeah. That's good to hear these things. That inspires me for sure to hear this from you. Would you ever recommend meditating with ambient or classical music, or maybe with field sounds like the sound of a ravine, waves, rain, etc.? I don't, because that's not how I've been taught. All the teachers, we've had teachings from many teachers, and many great ones, fortunately, and that's never been something they've introduced. It's another stimulus, that can take your attention. So now you're sitting and you're thinking about the song, and it might be a classical piece of classical music that you have a memory, that you dance to at a wedding, or whatever. It's like, it's not, you don't really need it. It's not gonna, all we're doing is looking at our mind. We don't need any um we don't need any embellishment there. We don't need any, the only good thing when we talk about a place to meditate, that's good because it's, that can help you, ground your practice and routine and your discipline, knowing that this little corner where your cushion is and maybe where there's a photo or something, that place, your body starts to know what to do in that place. But once you're in the, in your pose, you're going into meditation. But so I haven't been taught that. There may be other techniques that, implement that kind of thing, but I don't know that, and that's not what we've been taught.
Also in Buddhism, a big emphasis is put on holding your place. When you sit in the beginning, it's very, very difficult. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of patience to hold your seat. It's very difficult to watch your mind because your mind you keep following stories and coming back and coming back. It's very difficult, but there's a huge payoff when you can learn to watch your mind. Eventually you can learn how to master it. You can learn how to undo the storylines, and you can start to live in a bigger spaciousness. So that's what it's why you don't want any exterior elements. You want to be able to face your mind very, very openly and very, very honestly, nakedly.
Like religion, I don't agree with everything said today. I find comfort in practicing. I use what is best for me to have clarity. The Buddha said to the people he was teaching at the time, not to take his words not just to take his words because he said them, to take his words and practice them and see if they work for you. That is in, I know for a fact that is in the sutras, that was something that he spoke about, that these are methods that you should try and see. That's kind of why I asked the question today for comments, and it's not about we want you to agree with what we say, or we want you to just accept what we say because we're saying it or we found it to be beneficial, something like that. We're saying it so you can try it. And I think in that respect, skepticism is a good thing. To examine these things and see, if it's right, if it works for you, and if it's something that makes sense to you.
Absolutely. And the Buddhist path is about discovering your deeper nature. I wouldn't call it necessarily religious because there is no religious head. Buddha was a person like us who attained enlightenment, meaning that he touched and he uncovered his basic nature by stripping away the delusions of the egoistical mind. But again, the journey, there's no boat, there's no plane. One does it on one's own, with one's own feet, with great instructors, our teachers who help us. But again, it's very, very good. You should examine everything for yourself, but you have to examine it not on the conceptual level. You actually have to sit down and meditate and experience it firsthand, because it's not about concepts. The way that our awareness grows is not by acquiring more information. It grows by actually eliminating a lot of unnecessary things, habitual things. And that's what the Buddhist path is really about, is taking away and reestablishing kind of a more original state of our awareness.
I've been enjoying your live sessions for a while now. They are always thoughtful, well prepared, produced, and delivered. Thanks to Nick Solidio. The teachings and discussion are both deep and accessible. Your several guests have also been great. I find the takeaways and practice techniques of enormous help to manage the challenges of daily life, and I try to bring the practice with me on the street. I've shared this treasure with others who've also tuned in and are appreciative. Sincere thanks. Thank you. Thanks for the feedback today. It's helpful to hear. And if you want to continue through the email, meditation with Michael Imperioli, I think that's the email. It'll go right to it after this. If you want to be more specific or just talk about what's not working, where you're having trouble, now that we're finished 37 practices, we can have some couple of weeks, we can get more detailed about those things if you want to, and we can try to address those things. Once again, thanks, Victoria, for taking us through these 37 practices of Bodhisattva for the last few weeks. And thank you, Nick Solidio, as always, for producing this. And with that, let's dedicate the merit from today's session for the benefit of all beings. By this merit, may all beings attain the state of enlightenment and conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. May they be liberated from this ocean of samsara and its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. See you next week, probably next week more at the regular time, which is 10 o'clock Eastern. See you.